welcome to Scrollin', a podcast about the Elder Scrolls Online. I'm Ket, and this is episode number 22. So this week, Davius is out of town. He's on a family vacation, so I'm going to be flying solo for this episode. I was thinking it was going to be a shorter episode because of that, but it turns out this has actually been a pretty busy week as far as news and announcements and stuff like that goes. So we actually do have quite a bit to get into, so hopefully I can just hang in there on my own and get through it all. So on Wednesday, Bethesda did a live stream where they just previewed the Quarter 3 DLC content that's going to be coming out. So I'll put a link to this in the description. If you want to check this out, you can. But this is a typical Q3 DLC pack, so it's a 2-dungeon pack. And it's going to continue the Dark Heart of Skyrim storyline that we're getting, for the entire year here. So this is just the next installment of that. This will be included with ESO Plus. Even if you don't own Greymoor, you'll still be able to access these dungeons and all of that as long as you have ESO Plus. And just some notes that I took while watching the live stream. So a few things. The names of the dungeons. One is called Stone Garden, and that's going to be in Blackreach. The other one's called Castle Thorn. That's going to be in Greymoor. They also said there's going to be a bunch of performance updates, like always. And they're also continuing to focus on updating item sets. This sounded like mostly they were interested in changing sets so that they perform better, so that the server can handle them better. Not so much about balance, although that may be some factor in some of these changes that they're making, but they made it sound like performance was their main motivator there. There's also going to be some new stuff for housing in this next patch, and I wish Davius was here because this is something that he and I have actually talked about. We thought would be really cool, and they're adding it now. So character pathing in housing. So they're going to add a tool that allows players to create a path for pets and mounts and assistants to follow in your house. And they made it sound like there's a whole bunch of options. Like you can put them on a loop or just like a back and forth thing, or I think you can program multiple stopping points for them and stuff like that. They didn't get into a lot of detail, but it sounds really cool and just like another way to add some life to your house. I wish that they would let us have the basic merchants, like the blacksmith, woodworker, clothier, an alchemist, an enchanter, all those people. I would love to have a player housing version of those people that could live in your house. You can buy all the standard rune stones and all that kind of stuff from them. That'd be really cool. And then they also talked about related to housing. There's going to be a new type of NPC that they call a house guest. And they didn't really give us a lot of details, but it sounds like the whole purpose of these NPCs is just to live in your house and just add a bit more life to that space. But I don't think they actually do anything. I don't think they're merchants, or I don't think you can really interact with them in any way, but they're just there. Maybe they're one of your helpers that are helping you, maintain your mansion or whatever. They also reminded us that the PTS for this patch goes up this coming Monday. So if you're listening to this podcast as soon as it comes out, then basically 24 hours from now, PTS will go live. And I'm pretty sure all players have access to this PTS cycle. So if you want to, you can jump in there and start checking this stuff out right away, start testing things, giving feedback. Another thing they mentioned, there's going to be a new type of mount, a brand new type of mount added to the game this patch, and it's basically a tandem mount. You can have two players on one single mount, and they said that you have to be grouped up with that player. So you invite them to group, and then I guess if you have this certain mount, you can summon it, and I'm guessing it's the player. It's kind of like activating a synergy. Like the other player will be able to walk up, interact with it in some way, and then mount them out. It seems pretty cool. I thought that would be really, really nice if maybe you just got a friend into the game, like me, I've been playing a long time, and occasionally I'll convince a friend to jump in and play with me, and we'll do stuff together. But of course, my mount is fully leveled because I've been playing a long time, and theirs is brand new, so they're super, super slow. And if we're out in Cyrodiil or something, it can be a real pain just to kind of try to keep up with each other. So this could be cool. I could get one of these tandem mounts and just say, "Hey, jump on the back. I'm fully leveled here. We're going to get there fast," and they don't have to have a fully leveled mount. So I think that's a really cool thing. So after that, they kind of got into these new dungeons a little bit and just gave us a bit of a preview. They didn't dive like really deep on mechanics and stuff like that. They just kind of were giving us a sense of the vibe and that kind of thing. So Castle Thorn, this one is a very gothic, very vampire kind of vibe going on here. I think it looks really, really cool. And it just from what I was seeing on the stream, it seems like they really nailed that kind of aesthetic very, very nicely. They give us some of the kind of basic story setup, like what kind of why you're there and that sort of thing. And just a quick walkthrough. They just kind of went through the dungeon. They had all the developer cheats turned on and stuff, so they weren't actually going through the fights or anything. They were just kind of showing you what the environment looks like, showing what the different enemy types looks like and stuff like that. There were no like boss mechanic demonstrations or anything like that. They kept saying they want players to figure that out on their own. But they were just kind of showing it off, and it looked really cool. They also made a point to point out the costuming of some of the NPC enemies. It seemed like they wanted to focus on that for a minute. And I wonder if that's like a hint that that's maybe a new motif style that we can expect to have access to as players. There's going to be a skin that you can earn whenever you complete this dungeon. I think you just have to complete it on Veteran is all you have to do to get the skin. And they said for a normal run, of course it depends on skill level and stuff like that, but they said it should typically take 30 to 45 minutes to clear the dungeon beginning to end. So it seems like kind of a typical like middle of the road kind of DLC dungeon in terms of difficulty. They showed another thing as far as how you activate hard mode in dungeons going forward. There's just a new kind of mechanism for activating hard mode. Instead of having a scroll that you read now, there's like this brazier that you light, and then that brazier will summon like a really huge, bright, glowing banner that's really easy to see no matter where you are in the arena. You can look over there and just easily see, yep, hard mode's enabled, or no, it isn't. And it's a toggle too, so you can turn it on and off, as long as the fight hasn't started yet. So, you can say, yeah, let's activate hard mode. And then if someone in group says, hey, no, I don't want to do hard mode, you can just turn it right back off. No big deal. You don't have to wipe and all that kind of stuff. They said going forward, this is going to be how they do hard mode in dungeons from now on. But as far as existing dungeons, they said that there's some complications there. They can't just like flip a switch and this new thing is added to all those dungeons. They're going to have to take those on a case-by-case basis, and they may or may not be able to change every dungeon. So they're going to add this new hard mode mechanic to the dungeons that they can, but they may not be able to change all of them. So some of them might just have to stay with the old scroll kind of method. And then the Stone Garden dungeon, they got into that one a little bit. So this one's a little more werewolf themed, and it's a bit more of a natural setting. So it's not a castle. It's a kind of you're underground. It's it's in a Blackreach, and you're seeing all these glowing plants and rocks and lava and stuff like that. They said there's lots of secrets to discover in this dungeon, and I don't know, they didn't get any more specific than that, but I guess there's some secrets in there. And this one's unique, and they said this is the first time that they've done this in a dungeon. Each individual boss in this dungeon has their own hard mode. So I think there's 3 total like main bosses in that dungeon, so you can potentially do hard mode on all 3 of them, or just 1, or just 2 of them. Funny enough, they didn't mention what you get for doing 1, 2, or 3 hard mode bosses. And even someone on the live stream, like one of the people in chat, asked, and they didn't know. They didn't have the answer. So I guess there's just a funny oversight during the live stream. They just didn't have that info available. But surely you get something additional, depending on how many hard mode boss fights you do in this dungeon. And yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting that they did this with just one of the new dungeons, but the other new dungeon, it's just the final boss is the only hard mode fight in that one. So that's kind of interesting. And I wonder going forward if this is just kind of an experiment, and they're maybe going to see, do we want to do this for all dungeons from now on or not? Or maybe this will just be one unique dungeon. So anyway. They didn't really get into much of the new armor sets. We're going to find that out in the patch notes on Monday, but they did show off a couple. So one of the new monster sets is called Lady Thorn's Guise. And the 2-piece bonus for this, when you cast an ability that costs health, you spawn a blood ball for 10 seconds, and that can happen every 10 seconds. And then that blood ball provides a synergy that you or an ally can activate. And then that synergy deals 11,000 disease damage to nearby enemies. It doesn't say how big of a radius. Plus, it applies Major Maim for 5 seconds. And Major Maim, that reduces their damage by 30%. And it says enemies can only get Major Maim from this set once every 30 seconds. So they can get Major Maim from some other source, but they can only get it from this set once every 30 seconds. This seems like it could be interesting on a Magic and Necromancer. You know, they have that AoE graveyard ability where they can activate their own synergy. You know, and this is another thing that allows you to activate your own synergy. So, I don't know, it seems like it would kind of fit that theme fairly nicely. And then they showed off one of the 5-piece sets. This one's called Arcasis's Genius. It's a heavy tanking set, and then the 5-piece bonus. When you drink a potion, you and up to 3 group members get 44 ultimate, and that can happen every 30 seconds. So pretty simple, pretty basic, but I think that's pretty cool, actually. Just every time you chug a potion, you and 3 group members get 44 ultimate. Seems pretty good. They did say that there are no new additions to Antiquities, and then they gave us just a quick little nugget of what the Q4 DLC is going to be. It's going to be called Dark Storm, and the prologue to that DLC is going to be available on this PTS cycle. So you'll be able to kind of get a little taste of that here pretty soon. And if the past pattern continues, that Q4 DLC is going to be mostly story content, probably a new zone, and probably not a lot of PvE content, although it could happen. Like with Murkmire, we got the Black Rose Prison. But then with Southern Elsewhere, which was last year's Q4 DLC, there was no PvE, dungeons or arenas or anything like that at all. It was just the story content and nothing else, which I thought it was really, really good. But that was something that some players complained about. So I hope that we at least get an arena or something like that with this Q4 DLC coming up. So that's kind of all the notes I took over that live stream. And they did also release a press release called Stonethorn and Update 27 Preview, which is basically just a concise written version of that live stream. It just covers pretty much the same exact info, but if you want to see it in a nice, simple written format, you can see that there. So I'll put a link to that in the description. Another thing, this is a forum discussion created by one of the developers. The name of the discussion is Update 27 Combat Preview, and I'll put a link to this in the description as well. They don't give us a lot of details of exactly what these changes are going to be. I expect, on Monday's PTS patch notes, we're going to get all those details. They just kind of give us an overview of what their goals are and a general sense of how they're approaching it. And they, right off the bat, they tell us these are proposed changes and, anything could happen over the course of PTS. So I think they're just kind of telling us like, hey, don't get up in arms right away. These are just proposed changes. And they say some of the changes they're making are for performance reasons and others are for balance reasons. And they give us some examples. A performance-related example, the armor set Trial by Fire. They say that set's no longer going to grant resistance to a unique type of damage category, such as flame or poison damage. But instead, it's just going to grant you armor while you're under the effects of any elemental status effect. So if you have burning or poisoned or the chilled status effect, anything like that, you just get an armor buff, just a regular armor buff. It's not specific to that particular damage type. And apparently that's just something that's easier for the server to handle. It doesn't have to, I guess, do as much math or something like that. So that's a performance-related example. And then a balance-related example they give is Armor of the Veiled Heritance, which this is one that needs some attention. I don't know if this is going to be enough or not, but they say that this set is now going to grant 516 weapon damage whenever it procs, up from 400. And then it will also permanently increase the damage of your bash attacks by 516. So I don't know if that's going to be enough. I think most people's issue with this set is the way that you proc it. So you have to interrupt someone in order to get that weapon damage buff. And, the thing is, in both PvE and PvP, like the number of times you actually have the opportunity to interrupt someone are so seldom. I mean, it does happen sometimes, but there's no way you're going to be able to rely on that to guarantee that you're going to have this weapon damage buff. Even if the buff is 1,000 weapon damage, maybe that would be enough to make it worthwhile. But I don't know, because still, even then, like, there may be fights where you hardly have that buff active at all, I imagine. So it's cool that that set's getting some attention. I think it's much needed, but I think really what needs to happen there is they need to change the way that this set gets procced. They also say that each class will be receiving some minor adjustments based on the needs for performance adjustments, feedback received, or emergent concerns over the past year. They give one example, the Necromancer's Grave Grasp ability. They say that based on their reports, this is the least used skill in the Necromancer skill line. So they're going to buff it a little bit so that each of the 3 circles that it summons will have escalating values of crowd control, starting from a snare, going to a stun. So the 3rd circle will actually stun someone who's standing in it. Another change they're making is they're moving Vigor from the Assault skill line to the very first slot. So simply completing the Intro to Cyrodiil quest unlocks the skill. So I think a lot of players are going to be happy about this because you don't actually have to engage in any PvP at all to unlock this very, very valuable skill. For most stamina builds, this is not an optional skill. You have to have it. So, that one bummer is that's going to bump Rapids down so that you don't unlock that as easily, because that used to be the case for Rapids, right? You just do the Intro to Cyrodiil quest, and now you have Rapids. So your low-level character, your brand new low-level character, for example, who has a brand new mount that's not very fast, you can at least just go get Rapids really quick, and you can get around somewhat quickly. So now you're actually going to have to engage in a bit of PvP to get Rapids unlocked, but I don't know. Probably a good trade, being able to unlock Vigor really quickly like that. I think probably a lot of players, especially PvE players, will probably be pleased about that. We also get an official forum discussion for the game performance improvement preview for this patch coming up. So they just give us a general overview of some of the things that they're going to be doing related to performance with this patch. They say they're going to be experimenting with some things about how AoE abilities work. They're going to be doing some tests on the live server going forward. So I guess we can look forward to seeing some actual testing happening in the live game here pretty soon. They said that they're continuing to revamp all item sets. So I guess every single item set in the game eventually is going to be touched at some point. And then they're continuing to address things like memory leaks, physics issues, trial performance, and unexpected loading screens, and some group finder issues as well. And the only other news this week is Mid-Year Mayhem is now over. So I think this was one of the best Mid-Year Mayhems in quite a while. And I think the number one reason for that is performance was pretty good. We talked about this on the last episode, but I think this is something that took a lot of people by surprise, that we had all these multiple campaigns opened up. Every single one of them were pop locked, and you would get in there, and there's these huge 50v50 fights, these huge fights. And, there were some stutters here and there, but it was absolutely playable for the vast majority of the time. And so, this event happening is pulling a lot of people into PvP. Plus, this new antiquity system was already something that was pulling more and more players into PvP also. So I think those two things combined, plus the performance was up to it. It's just one of the best PvP events we've had in a really, really long time. There's a lot of players getting in there, dipping their toes into PvP, and seeming to enjoy it. I hope we have a good number of players that now that this event is over, they had a good enough time where they're thinking, you know what, maybe I'm going to hang out in PvP from now on. So this week I have not been playing as much as usual. Davius has been out of town the past couple of weeks, and I've used it as an opportunity to kind of catch up on some things, in my personal life as well. It's good to take a break. I play this game a lot, so it's good to take a break once in a while and come back to it fresh. And I definitely am feeling that itch to get back in and kind of get back to my normal Elder Scrolls routine, and I plan to do that this next week, and we're going to be back to business as usual on the next episode. But I did play some this week, and here is what I've been up to. So um, I've been spending some more time on my old Magicka Nightblade, and this was my original PvE main. Back when Magblades dominated PvE, this was my main guy. But ever since I transitioned to PvP and focusing kind of most of my efforts on that, I've pretty much been maining a Stamplar ever since then. And I've gotten into a lot of other characters as well, and really Magblade has become one of my least favorite characters to play with in PvP anyway. But I've had a lot more PvP experience now, and I'm a lot better than I used to be. So I wanted to revisit this guy and just see what I can do. Maybe I can be good with a Magblade now. So he has a pretty standard setup. He has an Ancient Dragon Guard with Lich on the back bar and a Master's Fire Staff on the front bar. And I've been experimenting with different monster sets. I'm not really decided on one yet, but that's the basic setup. I did a bunch of BGs. That's usually how I test builds, just because it's easy to get into a whole bunch of fights and just kind of see how effective you can be right away. I kind of drew the same conclusion that I always do when I play with a Magblade in Battlegrounds, which is it's hard to get great results with a Magblade in Battlegrounds, at least by team deathmatch standards, where it's all about kill counts and that sort of thing. I feel like the Magblade just doesn't have the toolkit that other classes have to rack up those big kill counts the way other classes do. Now, of course, there are exceptions. You see amazing Magblades out there once in a while. But I always say the same thing about those players. That's probably an elite player, and I just imagine what they could do, say, on a Magsork. Or if they're not an elite player, then probably they're just farming inexperienced players, and so it seems like they're really good. And again, what if that player was a Magsork? How much more effective would they be at farming those inexperienced players? I think probably a lot more. So I just don't think it's a fantastic class for deathmatch anyway. As long as there's noobs around, it's fun. But as soon as there's like good players that you have to go up against, I just feel like the toolkit really is lacking. So I definitely feel like Magblade is most at home in Cyrodiil. That's always the conclusion that I come to, and I have been doing quite a bit of Cyrodiil lately as well. And what's nice about Cyrodiil is I think you're evaluating your effectiveness based on different metrics, right? There's no kill counts. You're not looking at a kill score at the end or anything like that. So, that's not as important. The number of kills that you get really isn't as important. It's really just more about, are you getting into good fights? Are you having good experiences and things like that? And also, like, Cyrodiil compared to Imperial City, there's not all these mobs to be dealing with, and there's not AoE to be dealing with. And, especially in the sewers underground, there's all these closed, confined spaces, and that's the enemy of a Nightblade, because you're going to be pulled out of stealth really easily in a situation like that. So, every time I get the feeling that I want to go and play with a Nightblade again, especially a Magblade, I always very strongly get pulled towards Cyrodiil, because I feel like that's the only place where I'm really having a good time, and my skill set is being put to good use, and I have everything I need to be successful there. I don't know. My Battlegrounds testing with Magblades might be finished at this point. I might just be concluding that Magblades just aren't great in Battlegrounds, and I just need to play with them in Cyrodiil, and that's it. That's kind of where I'm at. Also been playing a lot more on my Magicka Warden. Just a reminder, I'm using Mighty Chudan, Hades Hearth, and Spell Power Cure. That's definitely the setup that I'm going to be sticking with. Currently, she's using 7 M-Pen with the Atronach Mundus Stone for extra Magicka recovery. And then the jewelry is 1 infused with a recovery glyph, and then I have 2 damage glyphs. I'm going to keep everything the same, except I am planning to make a couple of small changes. So for one, I'm going to switch to 4 Divines instead of 7 M-Pen. So it'll be 4 Divines, 3 M-Pen. And remember, we have base crit resist this patch. So even with just 3 M-Pen, we'll still have the same amount of crit resist as we had with 7 M-Pen last patch. So that 4 Divines is going to buff up my recovery Mundus, and I think I'm already kind of over-sustaining with this character. She's a Breton, and she has, like, unbuffed, her Magicka recovery is like 2,000, which I think is pretty high. Like, I never even come close to running out of Magicka. So that Divines is going to buff up my recovery Mundus a little bit to give me even more recovery. So I think what I'm going to do is drop that recovery glyph off of my jewelry and just go all damage glyphs on the jewels. So that'll bring me a little bit lower than the recovery that I have right now, but I think it's still going to overall be plenty of recovery because I'm a Breton. And like I said, I think I'm already over sustaining a little bit. So I'll have a little bit of extra damage, plus the heals will be a bit stronger as well because I have that extra spell power. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That's what's happening with that. I'm still waiting on transmute stones. I have like this build and my stamina necromancer that are basically just kind of sitting and waiting for me to get my transmute stones at the end of the Cyrodiil campaigns. So that's coming up here in a couple of weeks. And that's pretty much all I've been up to this week. I guess it is going to be a shorter episode after all. I felt like I had a lot to talk about, but I guess I underestimated the effect of not having another person here. I got through that stuff pretty quickly. So yeah, it's going to be a short episode as expected after all. Like I said, next week, Davius is going to be back. This is going to be a big week. We have a PTS coming up this week, so we're going to have a ton to talk about. So our next episode is probably going to be a pretty long one, so get ready for that. If you'd like to get a hold of us, you can email us at scrollinpodcast@gmail.com. That's scrollin with an I-N, no G, scrollinpodcast@gmail.com. You can also contact us in-game. I'm at Ket Sparrowhawk. Davius is at Star Jumper. I think we're going to call it an episode right there. Tune in next time, and we'll see you then.